I don't believe that the commission should have unlimited expenses, and there's still unlimited expenses in there. Right? It's just not definitive. I did notice that the compensation has to be controlled by council. I still don't agree with that, but at least you're attempting to control the compensation. You might consider controlling both expenses and compensation, because you do leave the expenses out. And that's basically, I guess, my favorite term, Pandora's box, unintended consequences, trips to Amsterdam, which is all would like to go on, but unintended consequences. So you might consider controlling both the expenses and compensation. Legal fees are not an issue. That is really, you know, my primary concern. Everybody needs to be protected. I mean, I'm 68 years old, and if I don't win the next election, I may have to apply for a job at City Hall. And if they don't give it to me, I may have to file a complaint based on age discrimination. But that might not happen. But I do want you to remember one other thing. With regard to the expenses, if you do vote for this bill, this ordinance, without doing something about those expenses, there are two folks that are up for re-election on a Democratic ticket. And I will mention the fact that you did not control expenses. This is basically what I would call an unfunded mandate at a municipal level. You know, stuck in here, as Mrs. Tamam pointed out, was one municipality spent $250,000 on it, another one $315,000, another one $470,000. That's a lot of money. And yes, we had to let people go. So we need to control the money. It's not being handled very well. That's my primary issue. On an aside, there's a resolution time. Mr. President, can I address an item with regard to a resolution that's coming?
As long as it's on the agenda, yes.
It's on the agenda, okay.
You have the floor.
There's a certain amount of money being moved from IT over to, I think it's human resources. Somewhere it's item 11A in the neighborhood of $4,500. Okay, I've been suggesting, and again I do it with my polite voice, to have an opt-in capability on the website to capture people's email IDs so that the city can communicate with them directly. And I know we let go of one IT staff member last year, and it's not that this person that's going to be running, that needs this $4,500 for their salary doesn't deserve it, but I would like someone in the administration to pay attention to that. I do ask politely with all due respect, and that's it for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the left? In the back?
My name is Timothy Chadwick. I live at 1415 Monocacy Street, Bethlehem. Wasn't sure I was going to speak tonight, but for the sake of making sure that we have enough people from Bethlehem speaking, I wanted to say a few words. I also wanted to speak also about a little update on the story that I told you the last time I spoke at the committee meeting. I won't tell the whole story for those who weren't here, but my three gentlemen that were kicked out of Lehigh Theta Chi back in 1974-75. I've been in touch with one of them, the African-American, one of the African-American gentlemen, is a doctorate at Cornell University teaching. He's about to move to Oklahoma and take on a head of a department, and so I was very glad to hear from him. But I also found out that Philip Lund, who was probably the most vocal of the three of them, the most amazing human being, one of the most amazing human beings I ever met, passed away of AIDS back in the 80s. I did not know that, and I was very saddened to hear that. And I would hope that the fact that you were waiting another 2 weeks is just appalling to me, since you've waited really, to me, 37 years to do the right thing for all of the people of Bethlehem who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, intersex, or different in sexuality. This is not a moral issue. This has nothing to do with morality. Scientifically, the psychological community in 1973 stopped calling homosexuality a disease. That's 38 years ago. The scientific community has proven genetically, through many different studies, that chromosomal issues have to do with sexuality when a baby is born. I was born heterosexual. I'm a white male. I can't speak for many minorities. Actually, I'm part of the dominating class that represses most people in the world. So I choose to have long hair, to fight for Palestinian rights, to do anti-war efforts. And I am unfortunately a bit angry that you're going to move this on, because in the 21st, I'm going to be going to DC, and I'm going to be doing resistance work to close Guantanamo and risking arrest at the White House, which I've done many, many times. So I will not be able to be here to continue the voice. So I chose to speak tonight for that reason. I think that it's long overdue. I think you should vote on this tonight. I don't think there's any reason anymore to wait for this really, really important legislation to happen. You're the one major city in the Lehigh Valley that has now taken many, many years past the other two major cities to pass this ordinance. I don't understand the continually waiting process that we all have to go through. Many people take a lot of time and effort to come to these meetings and speak out to you, all of you, in very calm and very logical ways. And I think it's the right thing to do. But I think a lot of the semantics and the back things that are going on because of the religious community, just to me, are annoying. I'm not a super religious person, I'm a very spiritual person. I don't have a problem with God. It's his fan club that I have a problem with. So please, do the right thing and do this tonight.
Thank you. Just by a show of hands, how many more individuals would like to speak? Okay.
My name is Ignatius, and I used to be a resident of Bethlehem. I'm here because I'm against this bill, and I wish that the council had the courage to vote against it. Why? Because of the name of the city of Bethlehem. It stands for something. And I would like you to, in your conscience, to vote against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. The lady in the back.
My name is Julie Vitale. I live at 621 West Broad Street in Bethlehem. I didn't plan on speaking tonight, but over the last several meetings I've come to just in support. I've been very disheartened by realizing how many of my fellow citizens in Bethlehem harbor such I don't know, discrimination, and they feel like they have this right to this discrimination. It makes me nervous. It makes me scared and almost disgusted to say that I'm still living in this city that cannot, see what's happening around in other cities and say that what is right, is to protect civil rights. This is a civil rights issue, and I understand when people bring up things about money. It makes sense to have those sorts of things ironed out, but find the money. I mean, we are not talking about like, oh well, civil rights might cost a lot, so they're not as important. This should be something we stand for. I work with young people. I work with at-risk youth in Allentown. And many of our students, come to us because they've been bullied. They no longer feel safe in their own homes. They don't feel safe in the schools that they attend. And, so a good portion of those kids come to us. They have often picked up many, habits to try to deal with some of the abuse that they have dealt with. Many are LGBT, but many have other, issues that are, that are causing their bullying. And they're going to be graduating, and I'm sending a lot of them off to college, which I'm very proud of. And sending many of them off to enter the workforce. And many of them look at Bethlehem as a potential place for them to live. And it scares me when I see some of my LGBT kids saying, oh, I really want to move to Bethlehem, because I don't know what for them that's a really big step, moving to a different city, it's just a couple of miles away, but for them that's a big step, And to think that they're going to be working and living in this town that I have been able to call my home for the last 10 years. I've been very proud to call my home, but I don't know what's here for them. I don't know what kind of protections are going to be here for them. This is the next generation, and I really hope that City Council will look at what our next generation has to offer in terms of their experience and their skills and their hopes and dreams, and not allow employers and landlords and people like that to stomp on those dreams because of who those children are. I know that there are two ordinances that make me very nervous. Amendments, the I want to make sure that whatever we create has teeth, that I actually can enforce some of the things that we really believe in. And I think that the amendment that says that has a lot of exemptions is really something that, for religious organizations or religious people of faith, it's very broad the way that it's explained, and I feel like that's something that's really going to, again, take away the teeth of what we're trying to do here. And I don't know, I feel like I'm not someone who's well-versed in all the religions, but I do think that the right to discriminate isn't something that I've seen expressed much in religion, and so a lot of the faiths, at least of people that I know, who are very strong in faith. It just, discrimination is wrong in and of itself. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in the left section? Okay, we'll move to the center section. Mr. Shire.
Bill Shire, 1890 Eaton Avenue. As I said before, the idea of having such a commission is a no-brainer, and I am quite surprised that we've gone all these years without it. As for the Moravians, I'm not a Moravian, I'm not a Catholic either, but Moravians, for all the virtues, which were considerable, did have a somewhat mixed record on discrimination at first. But they weren't behind the times, and that's a subject for another time. The cost will exist. There's going to be a cost. Even if time is free, it's taken away from something else that doesn't get done. So there is a cost. But this is an important thing. The city must do the most important things, even though times are tight, and this is one of them. But as has been suggested, a not-to-exceed clause in the ordinance would be a good idea to start off. As someone said, you solve one problem, you create new ones. That's always true, or almost always true. But the idea is that the new ones in total are less than the one you solved. And that requires careful drafting. Delaying 2 weeks versus getting it right. Well, 2 weeks means some more things that are going on go on unchecked. But if you get it right, you prevent a number of new problems down the pike. So certainly, if you work hard in the next 2 weeks, maybe you can get it done. I'd like to raise or comment on 4 issues, 4 thorny issues, as yet perhaps unresolved. The first one is something that's probably not soluble, but I was thinking about the examples that were presented to you. Obviously, kicking someone out of a restaurant is a no-brainer. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. But and there's not a great degree of intimacy in a restaurant. Now, I understand that there's an exemption for somebody renting a room in their own house. If that's correct, the argument would be there's a lot more intimacy when somebody's living in the same house as you. And then we have these other situations in between, like the doctor who's forced to perform a transgender operation and doesn't believe in it, or the photographer who is required to take pictures of a homosexual wedding. Perhaps, and I say this may be insoluble, but perhaps there's language that could be put into the ordinance to define the degree of intimacy that's required for an exception. And I'm not saying any of those should have an exception, I'm just raising the question. But that's going to be a difficult one. It was mentioned tonight that the commission will have police powers. I would suggest quasi-police powers. While they can investigate, they can't arrest. But they're also, of course, at least quasi-judicial in the sense that they can levy penalties if they feel it's necessary. Like a French magistrate who can both investigate and determine guilt. And I think Italian magistrates are the same way. And that raises the question of enforcement powers. And to me, there's a trade-off between that and the sunset provision. Because, now, I don't expect that such a commission is going to cause any problems. But a well-crafted legislation tries to fend off any potential problems. And the more enforcement powers there are, the more important the trade-off, the sunset, becomes. Now, the one amendment would say that council can revise at its discretion. But that makes the issue political because it then requires a council member to say, to move that we review the commission. And somebody has to second. And then finger pointing can happen, saying, oh, they're against the Human Relations Commission, so it becomes political. I'm out of time almost. Religious exemption, obviously, it's just, the only exemption should be for the basic beliefs. And I think I covered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the center section? Right there, the front.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Monica Chibber. I was born in Allentown and raised in Whitehall, and I still live in Whitehall Township. I stand before you today as a human being who has experienced discrimination. Let me tell you, discrimination is not anything I wish upon anyone. It's very important to address discrimination because the longer discrimination is allowed to occur, the longer an injustice is occurring. I am a member of the Indian American community here. We have many members who live and work here in the city of Bethlehem, and we are proud to have endorsed this proposed human relations ordinance. Many Indian Americans are subjects of discrimination in housing, employment, education, and public accommodations. We know that our community will greatly benefit from the passage of this ordinance. And I strongly support and encourage the passing of this ordinance as soon as possible. Please keep in mind, though, there are two important points to this. The first being that the Human Relations Commission being created needs to be empowered to solve instances of discrimination. They will not be able to adequately represent people in Bethlehem without expanded powers. It is critical that the version which passes tonight, or which passes in the future, hopefully, include expanded powers for the Human Relations Commission to be effective. The second point is regarding the current religious exemption and how it will be applied. We strongly support the basic reasons for a religious exemption, although the version which passed during the last meeting goes too far in excluding people from following the law. Under the current version, a landlord who belongs to a church that doesn't like my religion could discriminate against our community. It is not in the best interest to exempt so many people. I urge you to reconsider and to pass the version that is supported by state precedent and proposed by the PA Human Relations Commission. If that is not possible, please support the version proposed by our allies at Pennsylvania Diversity Network. I again thank you for your time, support, and initiative to make Bethlehem a better place for everyone.
Thank you. Anyone? Gentleman in the rear.
My name is Fred Sorg, and I'm from Allentown, and I'd like to speak against the ordinance. I'm sorry. I'd like to speak against the ordinance. I'll make my comments very brief. I guess in my years of experience, I've always thought about the legislature and when they try to legislate love. I think of the abortion of discrimination against the unborn. I think about the discrimination against, in this very city, you have gambling, which affects the family. I think about the discrimination that's taking place, and it really upsets me because you're trying to legislate love. How do you do that? How do you legislate love? You can't. And you're putting men in a position to legislate that. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the center section? Thank you.
My name is Jane Buscemi, and 915 Wood Street, Bethlehem. And I've been raised here, grew up, born in St. Luke's. Sorry. My name is Jane Buscemi, 915 Wood Street, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, here. I was raised here, grew up in the Valley, and I've been away for 10 years, traveling to 9 different countries and been abroad. And, came back here to resettle because I love Bethlehem. Bethlehem has been a community. It's not, as I've heard earlier, you know, like other cities. No, it's not. Bethlehem is different. Bethlehem is a community that is very family oriented and offers a lot. And on my travels, my 4-year-old son one day, we were in Thailand, and he said to me, Mommy, something wrong, something wrong. And I was looking at him like, what's wrong? And he said, no like, no like. And I said, well, that's not kind. You shouldn't say that about the waitress. That's not polite to speak like that. And I was trying to encourage him. And as I was looking, I noticed something was a little bit awkward, a little bit off, a little bit different. And later my husband, he just looked at me, and then I realized that she was really a he. And this comes from the innocence of a 4-year-old who has not been polluted, who has not been penetrated by society, someone who just felt like something wasn't right. And I am a Christian, and I believe that we are created in the image of God, male and female. And I read the Bible, as all these other people here speak, but I believe that discrimination of ethnic discrimination differs from sexual preference. And my mother is Taiwanese, my husband is American Korean, and I've seen ethnic discrimination. My children are 75% Asian. My children are here. My son plays in North Central Little League, my daughter's at Pennsylvania Youth Theater, and I've seen it. I've seen that type of discrimination, and it's understandable, and we accept and we embrace and we love each other. But there comes a time when we need to stand up for what is normal, what is acceptable, what has been, and there's a reason why it has been that way. And at this point, I really feel that this ordinance is going against what I believe protects. I feel it's discrimination against me and how I am raising my children. I would like them to be in an environment where they see, where they can grow up and they can learn and they can be protected and they can see small town, small community feeling. We don't need to be like New York City. We don't need to be like a large city that just I embrace and I love all people, but that doesn't mean I need to necessarily agree with their style of living or their behavior. And as I was thinking about this, I would just like clarification. I was thinking about what this means. And for me, when I thought about that, it means that men who think they're women must be permitted to use the women's restroom in any business or public accommodation. I thought about that. My little daughter being in a public restroom and someone comes in as a man dressed as a woman. I do not feel comfortable sending my 9-year-old into a public restroom. My son being at the municipal ice rink over there in the locker rooms, and there's a man dressed as a woman or a man changed to a woman. Whatever, it's very confusing to children. You're talking about keeping things unconfusing or making things that are not normal or normal that are not normal. However you want to say this, but I'm just letting you know, as a resident, I feel very uncomfortable with this ordinance, and I'm also an educator, and I'm well-versed and well-traveled, and I think there's something very special about Bethlehem. We don't need to be like all the other cities. We can keep the specialness that is here, and it's not saying we can't welcome, but we don't need to make it a law. Thank you.
Thank you. Lady in the second row.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Klinger, and I live at 666 Hayes Street in Bethlehem. And I know it sounds like the devil's address, but it's really so I'm glad you're laughing because I'm really super nervous. So just wanted to get that out there. But I wasn't planning to speak, but I decided to because I really wanted another voice, a resident of Bethlehem. I am a lesbian. I wanted another voice to speak in support of this ordinance because I've been coming to a few of these meetings now, I think most of them. I was late to one, but and I've heard a lot of support. And tonight, I just heard a lot of not support. And it's really sad to me. It's sad that it's also, the decision that this will be postponed even further. is sad to me as well, because I moved here 5 years ago, and I'm attending Lehigh in a doctoral program, and I'm actually going to be moving in July. And I was really excited that this was going to be passed before I moved. So I know you're saying it's going to be voted on in late June, but it just kind of makes me nervous that it's going to be postponed and postponed and postponed. And I know it's silly maybe and selfish, but I kind of want it to be passed while I'm still a resident, even if it's just for a few weeks. So what else? Sorry, I took notes because, like I said, so the religion thing, I think I probably have a little bit more of a radical view of this. Like, I think the religious exemption is, I kind of disagree with it, to be honest, but I understand why it's necessary. In my mind, I think like religion is about worshiping how you want to worship. You know, people are free to worship how they want to worship. I would never want to take that away from anyone. I just don't understand how that means, okay, but you can discriminate against people. How is that a part of someone's religion? I just don't get that. But I understand, with the whole, legislative thing. I'm not really up on all these political things, but I understand like how it's necessary. But I agree with a lot of people who spoke, and I think they articulated it better than I can. But I basically agree that it should, be, I think someone said tighter and cleaner, I think, and not too broad, but also, inclusive of, not so specific about church, synagogue thing, but, more inclusive. So, one other thing, and I think this is important. I think a few people have said that, okay, this is great, but not the sexual expression part. And it does not say sexual expression. It does not say sexual preference. It says sexual orientation, which is a different thing. And I think those are very, very necessary to be in there, along with all of the other forms of discrimination. All discrimination is wrong, and I think a lot of what we've heard tonight is saying, well, discrimination is wrong, but except for that one. And I obviously disagree with that. I don't want to be discriminated against. I don't want anyone to be discriminated against. So I think I just want to strongly state my view that sexual orientation and gender identity and expression should stay in there. I think that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mr. Italics to the gentleman over here, then we'll go, and the lady. Steve. How many people on the right? Okay.
Stephen Antalik, 737 Ridge. Well, I've had a very interesting experience. I've proved Einstein's relativity because in an hour and a half, I've gone through 60 years. And in those 60 years, it take me back to early times, and it's almost a deja vu here. I'm impressed primarily, number one, the ability for this to happen today. It really reflects the beauty of our democracy, that people can come up and say this with no fear, and for laws to be passed to protect those who come up and speak freely. This is very new, and it showed the growth of democracy. Because I recognize many things I heard tonight as a child, as I was growing up. I first experienced anti-Semitism by going to parochial school. The more I learned about Christ, the more anti-Semitic I became. Gays existed then, but they suffered from fear to go public in high school or earlier. If they were found out, they were taken out to a field and were beaten up severely. Or if a woman expressed her sexual preference, she wouldn't dare. She would just chased out of her family. Marrying outside of your ethnicity was unheard of. So many things were going on but they were underground because of fear. The early ethnics suffered severely because they were foreign invaders, and since they felt that, they didn't act out because they knew they would never be invited to the clubs or societies in Bethlehem because they didn't fit. So what this did was it put upon them a sense of second-class citizenship, and they lived with that. So that all these things, to me, are not new. I experienced them. At Lehigh,